Welcome to the Leslie Monday Podcast, a show for lovers of all things science fiction in books, TV, and movies. Each week, we'll review something new or dive into an old favorite. So come join me. I'm Leslie, and it's Monday. Hello, and welcome to the Leslie Monday Podcast. I'm Leslie, and today is episode 0.3, my review and thoughts on Season 3 of The Expanse. And I wanted to go ahead and give y'all a heads up. This might be a longer one, because while the first 6 episodes sort of finish out the Season 2 story, episodes 7 to 13 are basically like an entire season packed down into one. So this one might end up being a little bit longer than the others. And of course, full spoiler warnings that I have seen, all of the show. I might discuss things that might be a spoiler for you. And of course, I've read all the books, etc., etc. So let's get right into it. With the setup for this season, they introduce us right to the fact that the tensions are really brewing and set us up right for the war that's going to happen in Fight or Flight. I like the opening, how we go through the different news channels and we're hearing what's going on in the system. We hear the Earth channel, we hear a Mars channel, we hear a Belter channel, and then we kind of get to the Rossi and we can see the tension there with the effect that Naomi's lies has had on the crew. She lied about what she did with their sample of the protomolecule and had already given it to Fred Johnson. I think it's just a really nice way to go into the season. Here's all the conflict within the system, but then here's the conflict that's going on with our little team right here. And we check in with our Avasarala team escaping from the mouse ship. We also get Drummer sent on the salvage mission of the Nauvoo. So overall, this episode, I feel like, is a solid opening to this season to end up finishing out the Season 2 story of Caliban's War. And there's so much to love in these first 6 episodes that they do not let up or take a breath for a second. There is no filler in any of these. They don't waste a moment of screen time. Everything that you see, even in the background screens or a transmission that you might hear playing, could be an Easter egg for things to come, an Easter egg for things that have already been, or just like a, hey, haha, we put this in here for you, the fans, sort of a thing. And it is great. They really, fill up every moment of time. You really can't miss an episode in this season and know what's happening. You can't miss episode 2 and then understand everything that's going on in episode 3. There really are details that you need, so you have to watch every single one. And speaking of episode 2, we get our Rossi crew together with Bobby and Avasarala in an awesome space battle. And I just wanted to pause on this space battle real quick to say 2 things. And one is that space battles are something I think The Expanse does really well. And I know I haven't mentioned it before, but one of the things I truly love about The Expanse is their attempt or ability to really blend hard science, like actual science fact, with the fiction and still tell a really good, interesting, compelling story. Like, I find real science and what we're doing in space and what we're all capable of, like, fascinating as the next person. But part of why I like science fiction is the fiction part. It's telling that story, making us think, challenging our notions or preconceptions, and, it's together. I like both of them together. So while I do like some hard science fiction, it's usually not as compelling to me because what I find is that they're so focused on trying to be actually scientifically accurate, physics accurate, that sometimes they lose the heart of the story or the more interesting part that's going to connect with your readers or in a show connect with your audience, which is that fiction part and the compelling story being too focused on this has to be scientifically accurate. Oh yes, you hear my bullet points. I wrote down that I do think that some of the space battles in The Expanse here are more impressive than what we see in Star Wars or Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, and I know this probably sounds like sacrilege to some people, but when you think about those battles, those are aerial battles taking place in a space setting. They're moving around exactly the way that an aerial battle would take place, where I feel like The Expanse actually focuses on, and especially in the books, they do a really good job of showing you how they're taking into account this is a space battle, right? Everything's moving slightly in space. I don't know that you can ever just be completely still, and the ships are constantly moving forward. So if you shoot where they are right now, of course they're not going to be there by the time that your torpedo gets there. You have to shoot where they're going or in their trajectory and things like that. But they just do such a great job of incorporating the science fact into the fiction, and I really like that. And the second thing I wanted to point out is that at this point we have a change from the books. So if you read the books, you know that Avasarala and Bobby actually end up coming to the rescue of Jim and the crew in the book, which even when I was reading it never made sense to me, because we have the same situation, right? Aaron Wright has said capture Avasarala, apprehend her at any cost, so basically dead or alive. But just by pretty much the virtue of Avasarala being herself and the fact that Admiral Souther is part of the UNN contingent of the Jupiter fleet out there, that none of the UNN ships open fire and destroy her on this completely defenseless yacht that she and Bobby are on, which never made sense to me in the book. I'm thinking, Admiral Wynn is like right under Aaron Wright's thumb. There's got to be some others that are under his thumb. It doesn't make sense to me that not a single one of them would just go ahead and open fire on her in the books. So in the show, having it flip-flopped, where they're obviously, they're going to open fire on her and blow up the ship and apprehend her, tie up that loose end for Aaron Wright, and that it's Jim and the team that come in their gunship and save them, that makes far more sense to me. And that's just one of those switches from what you have in the book versus what you have in the show that I actually like. And I just wanted to toss that out there. And, did anybody else like that, or did you not remember it at all? Or do you think, oh no, it should be by the book no matter what? Because sometimes the authors even realize that maybe something didn't make sense after the fact that something gets published. Is there no room to edit anything because, well, it's already done? Tell me your thoughts. I'm interested to hear. I just thought of, too, editing things after the fact. Star Wars, George Lucas. Anyway, in episode 2, we get introduced to my favorite character this season, and that is Anna. And I'm not even going to try and butcher her last name. Let's just stick with Anna. And there's so much to love about her character. Really, there is. There's so much. I wanted to specifically focus on the piece about her character that I love so much, is that she is a religious character that isn't portrayed as a stereotype. And it's amazing. It's a breath of fresh air to have a religious person, a person of faith, shown as an intelligent, educated, critical thinker, and not just as, a lot of the portrayal that we get even in the media, in the news and stuff of, they don't believe in science, or maybe they're crazy anti-vaxxers or something. And just to have her portrayed as an actual whole human person, that it's not just the fact that she's a minister and they only focus on that and she's only ever in the scene to say something about Jesus or a scripture or things like that, that she actually has capacity for action, and she can influence things. And I love the portrayal of her character so much. And her breath of fresh air is, if there's a book series, I don't know if you've if you've heard of it. It's called The Sparrow, and then the follow-up is called Children of God. And it's another book that's really good about presenting religious thinkers on equal footing. Like, nobody is a stereotype, with completely agnostic people, with completely of different faiths people. I think the one girl is Jewish, and we follow a Jesuit priest. And of course, there are atheists, and everyone's portrayed on equal footing. No one is a stereotype of their religion or their race. And it's a really good book. And I suppose if you're really, really against religion, you might not want to read it, because we do follow the Jesuit priest. He is our main character, so we get a lot from his perspective. But it's called The Sparrow, and it's really good. Anyway, I just wanted to point out that Anna, as a portrayal of a religious critical thinker, is such a breath of fresh air, especially in science fiction, and I really, really appreciate her portrayal here. I like also that we get Anna as the balance to Ehrenreich, because in Avasaral's absence, she's out in space. There's no angel on the Secretary General's shoulder to really counter what Ehrenreich's doing. And in these episodes, Sean Doyle really steps it up. And I don't know if it's just because the writers are now giving more for him to do in these seasons. Well, these episodes in particular, for Ehrenreich's character, or if it's just him stepping it up another notch. But it is really great. I love how we get to see him as the master manipulator, and how when nobody's there to counter him, how much influence he has over the Secretary General. It's just crazy. And his little jabs and stabs that he has back and forth with Anna, because now that she's there, she's kind of starting to take that angel on the Secretary General's shoulder and counter him. And you can just see, just even in the looks they give each other, and they stare across the tables at each other, when they first meet. And he says, is this like a sign from God? And Anna says, well, that's a question that people use to make fun of, religious people. But they just have this really good banter and back and forth. And it's so great. I really love it. Over the course of the episodes, we also get to see the developing friendship between Amos and Prax. And I like this parallel that's kind of starting to grow for Amos here, where in the previous seasons, he needed somebody else to be his guide star, to tell him, right from wrong, to help him make decisions and figure out what's going on. And now he's kind of becoming that person for Prax in these episodes, that he's starting to see some of himself in Prax, especially like when he's teaching him how to shoot the gun, and he's saying, well, I want to save my daughter or get revenge because that's the next best thing. And the look on Amos's face that he's recognizing, and he doesn't want Prax to be like him. And just that relationship and getting that development with Amos, that he's really starting to understand and make connections, that maybe he can start making these decisions on his own, is really great. And of course, we have to talk about episode 4, Reload. So it has 2 of my favorite scenes from this season. One of them, of course, being the Rossi team when they rescued those Martians who were trapped on their ship. And of course, the Martians try and take the ship back, because that's not the Rossi, that's the Tachi, and they want to take it back. I love Bobby's entrance into that conflict, when she just casually saunters in, hey, what's up, fellas? Totally calm, cool, collected. It is fantastic. And I love how the one little Martian guy, he immediately gives up, right? He recognizes her instantly. He knows that she's a Marine. Instantly, he just hands up, he gives up just that quick, because he knows there's jack squat that he could do to stop her if she decides to take him down. And he just right gives up. I don't want to die here. It's great. And I love Amos wrapping that scene out with having missed the whole confrontation. That's perfect. And in this episode, we also get a really good Ehrenreich versus Anna scene. And it's when the Secretary General's giving his speech. And Anna had been there to help him write that speech. And of course, Ehrenreich manipulated it, edited it, put in a few little choice pieces of his own. And in that scene, when she realizes, as the Secretary General is giving the speech, she realizes what's happened, and then Aaron Wright looks at her and she's looking at him, and he's like, "Thank you so much for all your help," and she just knows. She knows. And the confrontation afterwards, and she's chewing them both out. But I love how she just looks at Aaron Wright and flat out tells him, "You don't get to speak to me ever again." And, how many times have you wanted to just, like, look at somebody and, like, you know what? You don't get to speak to me ever again. Just, like, don't come over here, don't talk to me. Of course, Aaron Wright looks really smug in that instant, but, we know what's coming to him and what's going to happen. But it's just another one of those scenes that I could say, look at this scene, it's so great. Look at this scene, it's so great. But that's the one that stood out to me that I wrote down on my little bullet points here. Everything comes to a head in episode 5, Triple Point. Alongside of season 2, episode 12, the Monster and the Rocket, this is one of my favorite episodes of the entire series. And Captain Carino is another one of those one-off characters that we get to meet that I absolutely love. She's the captain of the Hammurabi, the Martian ship, and what a legend. She is amazing. I mean, what words could we give to her? Legend, hero, goat. She is fan-freaking-tastic. I'm so impressed with her. It's one of those, like, I wish I could be her when I grow up. She has just such a moving line about the nature of war when she's talking to, I assume it's her first officer there. Her ability to keep her cool head and read the situation for what it is and what's taking place as all the ships converge on Io. It's just amazing. And then, of course, the chaos that ensues from the mutiny on the UNN side between Admiral Souther and Admiral Wynn. She's able to read that situation because, her first officer's like, yeah, they're fighting each other. Let's go in for it. Let's, put the final nail in the coffin. And she's like, no. Because if we do that, they'll all turn their guns on us. They want to, have a mutiny. They're fighting with each other. Let them. Don't get involved. And it's just, again, like a round of applause. What a legend. She's amazing. Oh, yeah, I put like little stars next to her name. So well done. It was so well done. And I am sad at the loss of Admiral Souther here because during the mutiny, he does get shot. But I am glad that story-wise, they didn't shy away from what takes place in real situations. And occasionally, well, a lot of times in shows where we have, these are our specific characters, the main actors that we're following, they basically have plot armor and nothing could ever happen to them. And they could have done that with Souther. I mean, he wasn't quite as big a character, but he was still pretty big. They could have given him plot armor. They could have saved him from that bullet and then have him start, like, take control of the fleet and have a nice resolution like that. But instead they went with, he does get shot. Wynn kind of regains somewhat control, but then there's more chaos and the hybrid pods get launched and things like that. I appreciate the complexity of the situation and not just always wrapping things up, polishing them off with a nice bow. And, this is only like episodes 5 and 6, right? We still have a whole another basically entire season crushed down into episodes 7 to 13 to talk about. But truly, I like this episode, Triple Point, being right up there. Of course, it's not that episode 6 isn't as good, but I feel like more takes place in Triple Point that I really like, that kind of seals the deal as putting it up there with season 2, episode 12 for me. So one thing I have here on my little bullet points is in episode 6 really seals the deal for me as Anna as my favorite character for the season. Because when she confronts Aaron Wright, when he's getting arrested by the Secretary General, that whole scene, when they're going back and forth, because Aaron Wright's basically, I mean, you have to give him respect. He's saying, the Secretary General, basically what a bobblehead he is, and has he always been like that? And she knows. You can see it on her face. She knows, and it's such a poignant scene. it might take the satisfaction a little bit away from the fact that we're finally getting Aaron Wright arrested, but it doesn't take it away that much because, he still gets arrested, he still walks away, and we still get the Secretary General stepped down and we get Avasarala, so we're all good. Now, I know you're all waiting. We can't talk about episode 6 without getting a shout out to the Amos and Prax scene. You're not that guy. That is amazing. You want to get satisfaction from an ending, just watch that scene. Don't worry about getting it from the Aaron Wright arrest scene. Get it from that scene because it is perfect. What can I say? It's so satisfying. And I also, again, let's shout out the music because the song that plays over the end of episode 6 as they're going out and they're seeing the protomolecule, what is it? Is it a ship? Is it some sort of weird life form? Nobody has any clue what it is. When it's coming out, that piece of the song, and I desperately looked on the internet, I couldn't figure out the actual title for that song, so if you know, please tell me. But that is one of my favorite pieces in the background music. It's hauntingly beautiful, and I love it. We are at that halfway point, basically, of episodes 7 to 13, which, again, basically an entire season on its own. They did a really impressive job of really, drilling down, sawing down, chopping book 3 down to its essential bones to get it into this season, to wrap up the story. And obviously, I don't know at what point they knew that they were going to be canceled, but obviously they tried to compress it as much as they could to tell the story, to be able to wrap it up well. And we see a lot of story arcs that get given to the other characters. Like, I believe a lot of Michio Pa's storyline gets given to Drummer. And there is a storyline of, dang it, why can't I think of his name? Drummer gets the backbreak storyline that was for a different character. Bull, that's it. Bull was a character in book 3, and he was the one who actually got his spine broken. And of course, we see in season 3 that Drummer is the one who gets the spine broken storyline. In an attempt to keep this from being super, 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 super long, I'm going to try and just focus on highlights, my personal highlights. And that's not to say that any episode has any filler or is any less than any other episode, but I'm going to try and really focus in on just the highlights that really stood out to me on each one of these. So to start off with, Delta V, episode 7, is really what I had mentioned before in another podcast where we have this time jump and we have to hurry up and catch up with the characters, and it can throw you off. I did see many reviewers and reactors say wow, it feels like an entire different season, and it's basically because it is. I mean, think about if they knew that they weren't being canceled, what they could have done the same way that they've been doing, where it's half a season in each for the story, and how much longer it could have been drawn out. So in episode 7, Delta V, we get one of my favorite Anna lines where she's talking to the UNN officer and he's like, well, aren't you part of the godly contingent? And she says, I came here on a spaceship, not the wings of an angel. I can appreciate the difference. I love that. I just love that so much. That's another one of she's my favorite character this season. Just put another little ting, tick in her box. Episode 9, Drummer's speech to the Belter crew as they're going into the Behemoth is another one of my favorite points of the season. Episode 10, another Anna line that I thought was really thought-provoking when I heard it, and I actually had written it down in one of my journals because it really did strike me as really thought-provoking when she said, God gave us 2 texts, creation and scripture, and if they seem to contradict, it's because we haven't understood one of them yet. That was, again, to me, another look at this breath of fresh air portrayal of a religious critical thinker instead of just a crazy, cultist person, extremist, all the way to one side or the other, a stereotype. And episode 11, when Drummer and Ashford are needing to work out that situation they're in where they look like big trucks or some sort of other construction equipment, but they're stuck in there. I really like that every piece of that scene, from the realization how they're stuck there. Of course, my first question is, how did they end up perfectly just like that, except for, plot? But then him singing the song and they're talking and then they finally kind of start to understand one another. I really like that. And I'd also like to say that I like the space accurate fire that they show when the fire blows up and Naomi, I think it's her pod that she's going to get on the Rossi. They get that detail right of how fire is in space. I did see some people who were super confused and they didn't know what was happening. But again, you remember you're in space and there's no gravity or anything to like make a flame into the normal shape that you think fire should be in. So when you're in space, it just kind of expands out in the circle. But space accurate fire was really interesting and I really liked that. Also, the detail of Tilly and the tears in her eyes not falling out of her eyes, but just kind of staying there in that watery state over her eyes. Really cool. I liked that. Episode 13, when Anna and Amos talk before she begins that broadcast for Monica and to get everybody to turn off the engines in their ship. I really liked that exchange. And that was like, friends, I ship it, not I ship them together, obviously, because she's married. And of course, when Bobby comes to arrest him, that whole Alex saying Bobby and Bobby Alex, that piece is really great. You're like, of course, you end up together. Love that piece. Need I say more? Naomi dropping the lift on Diego while we, as the audience thought we're saying goodbye to Drummer and this is it and she's gonna die, and then suddenly whoosh, the lift comes down and it saves Drummer and probably smushes poor Diego, that poor crazy kid. Clarissa, or Melba, her last act to redeem herself and shut down the power in the behemoth, that to me is more moving, not necessarily because she's making her last act to try and do something good, but because of how she does it. And we see that she takes that power cell and flips it backwards, which is what Ren, the man that when we first meet Melba, he's the man that she murders, and he had stopped her from putting in a power cell backwards and told her, if you do that, it's going to shut down all the power and cause a cascade. And she uses that to save the ship and to save the rest of humanity that are there in the ring space, and also to save then, of course, Earth and Mars and everybody else out in the belt by shutting down the gun, basically, that was building up on the nucleus. That, to me, was the most moving part about her redemption right there, was that because she didn't want to kill him. She thought he was a good guy. We see her guilt from it throughout the rest of the season, that she killed him, and using that he taught her to then save everyone else. That, to me, was the moving part. I liked the wrap-up with Holden's speech over everything. I thought, this is how you end a series when you know that you're going to be canceled. You wrap up the storylines that you presented us with. You leave us with enough to wonder about, to be curious about, to maybe want more, so that maybe you get another season, like Amazon coming in and saving the day. But you wrap it up well enough. There's nothing left undone because you just canceled it and, well, there it is. And you don't take characters and change them and make them crazy. Game of Thrones season 8, like, this is how you do a wrap-up of a season when you know that you're going to be canceled and this is it. Man, I feel like I kind of went all over the place and was talking really fast because I was worried about being too long. But if you stuck it out this long, thank you so much. And tell me your thoughts about season 3. And did you have any thoughts about season 7 through 13 being book 3, being whittled down like that and really slashed? Were you disappointed that we didn't get some of the characters from the book if you've read them? Or did you not really realize and you're just watching the show having never read the books and just felt like, man, that was just pedal to the metal? Did you feel like if there were more episodes, you could have connected more with some of the characters? I did see some people who said they felt, because it was so compressed, that maybe they would have connected more with Melba or something if it had been over more episodes. But I don't know. Let me know your thoughts down below. As always, send me your questions, your comments. You can find all my links to my social media on my website, which is lalunsford.com. You can always write in to thelesliemondaypodcast at gmail.com. And tune in next time for my review of Season 4. And of course, after that, then we are going official live with the podcast on January 4th, where I will be doing Season 5 episode by episode. So until then, have a good one.